And then we've got a couple more people waiting to come in. All right. Welcome everybody to the October PPF meeting. This meeting, as with all of them, will be posted to our YouTube channel as well as the photo challenge. I want to mention something about next month's meeting while I've got everybody here. So next month is going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. As a 501c3, we're required to have an annual members meeting. And what we're going to do is the first half hour of next month's meeting, we're going to just have our members meeting then, where the board will just report to everybody what's been going on this year. And we will also announce who is going to be running for office next year for the board. And there will be some other information. Look for an email in the next couple of days that gives you more information about what's going to be going on and why we're doing that. But because we're doing that in the first half hour, we won't be having a photo challenge next month, and we're not going to have a 15-minute speaker. We will have a regular speaker, so a regular presenter. So we still will have a regular meeting after the first half hour. So just want to give everybody a heads up. I think it's a little bit different than how we've done things in the past, but as a 501c3, we're pretty much directed to have the annual meeting, and that's a good time to do it. So if you have questions about that after you get the email, feel free to reach out to me and ask your questions. I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, so let me look at my agenda here. All right, I think what's up next is we're going to do the photo challenge. After that, Steve Long is going to do a 15-minute presentation of some of the work he's been doing. And then Patricia Davidson is going to tell us all about working with color and landscape, which I'm really looking forward to hearing about. So Bob, if you want to share your screen and get going with the photo challenge, let's do that.
Today's the photo challenge goes for about 14 minutes. We had, I think, 17 or 18 people participate, and thank you for everyone who submitted photos. This month's theme was Memories of Home. So let me know if you hear or don't hear the sound.
Sound is good. Nice work, everyone.
Thanks, everybody who submitted photos. A lot of really interesting photos, and there must be a lot of interesting stories behind them all.
Bob, thanks for coming up with the photo challenges and for putting those slideshows together. Okay. So next up, we have Steve Long, who's going to do a 15-minute program on his work. Steve, I will give you the 5-minute warning when you get down to 5 minutes. So why don't you go ahead and share your screen?
Oh, sorry.
No worries. What are you seeing?
Oh, it's just making me go through my
Security settings.
Yeah.
So it may ask you to leave the meeting and close Zoom and come back.
Should I go ahead and do that?
Yeah, go ahead. We'll wait for you. I meet with people with Zoom just about every day, and this is a common thing for Mac users who haven't shared their screen before. It's a security setting to make sure that people aren't sharing your screen without your knowledge. So we're going to give him a minute to get back over here. Anybody have anything interesting they want to share while we wait? We've already gotten one good book recommendation. All right, here comes Steve.
All right.
Okay, there you are.
Thank you.
Mark, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Randy.
While we're waiting, if anybody has any latest on the iPhone 15 Pro, if the bugs have been fixed or not, I'd be interested.
At the best of my knowledge, the bugs have been fixed or will be fixed pretty soon. I'll probably be upgrading to one of those in the next couple of weeks. Okay, looks like.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, Steve.
Okay, great, thanks. So I'm Steve Long, and I'm new to the club and relatively new to photography compared to the most of the people that I've met in the forum. And so I feel like I'm still really, I mean, I assume I'll always still be learning a lot, but kind of for this presentation, I just chose to kind of have a project in mind and do the project. So, I titled it Nausea, which I mean, you may see why, but, and it's kind of about how something that a lot of people really enjoy, I don't enjoy. And I've used a lot of different photography techniques, I guess. I mean, just, things that I'm still learning about. So wouldn't say there's a specific style, but my goal is to make the pictures a little bit unsettling, and I'd be happy for any comments or thoughts. And I have a Lens Baby tiltable, or tilting lens that I used for some of these.
Mm-hmm. So, Steve, tell us about what attracted you to doing these unsettling images.
So I mean, I've always felt like sort of an outsider when I go to an amusement park. I've never really felt very amused by them, I guess, especially as a kid. Um, seeing other kids kind of having a great time and with each other, and I still get motion sickness easily, and it just didn't really enjoy it all that much. And thinking about just how, I mean, I think we all feel like outsiders at times, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just trying to some way express that through something that's, people think of as being sort of a fun place to be.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's sort of like some people talk about how scared they are of clowns. Maybe this is my sort of similar approach to amusement parks.
I love that.
Thank you.
Makes me feel a little sick, but I love it anyway.
Yeah,
I guess it's working.
exactly. It looks like they're having fun.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, I was having fun too, taking their pictures, but. And I just like in this one, I really kind of brought out the saturation, because that just kind of unsettles me a little bit when things are oversaturated too.
Mm-hmm. Are most of these at Oaks Park?
They're all at Oaks Park, yeah.
So Steve, I'm kind of curious, is like when you went out to Oaks Park over this day or over a number of days, it's like when before you open the door to leave the house, you're thinking, what are you thinking? I'm going to go out and photograph things that nauseate me, or
Kind of, yeah. Or I mean, just that make me feel you just kind of off kilter, or yeah, I mean, I did I did find that I mean, I went out several times and I did sort of feel nauseous when I went there, I think just from kind of past memories. But I mean, and I made a goal. I mean, my goal was to try to take pictures that were, yeah, that were not just like straightforward pictures, but to kind of somehow kind of make you distance yourself from, or distance the viewer from what's going on.
I'm kind of curious, why do you want them to distance? Because don't you want them to be puking?
To be puking.
Yeah, or nauseating?
I guess I don't have quite enough confidence in my photography skills to make people actually think I can actually make them throw up. But um, but I mean, I mean, I think part of it I mean, some of it is sort of the nausea, but also just sort of this feeling of not belonging there.
Mhm. I think you've done an effective job with some of the ones we've seen. I mean, you can certainly get that nauseous feeling.
Yeah, thank you, I guess.
But doesn't that depend on the audience? Because, like thrill seekers would say, wow, this is really cool. Give me more,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my goal is to make the person that loves going to the amusement park maybe see a different point of view. That's obviously in the eye of the beholder rather than my eye.
This one really helps me understand why I don't like oversaturation, because it really is disturbing to me too.
Yeah, good.
I actually have a little bit different point of view, is that I think you actually belong there as a photographer. And you have a unique vision there. And the other thing is, I had the opportunity to photograph the roller derby championship there,
Oh, wow.
to actually get in the middle of the rink. And that is a very exciting part of Oaks Park. And if you have the opportunity to go there and even sit in the stands and watch the roller derby, there's a lot of motion and there's a lot of excitement, and it's a really great place to photograph. And I think that you actually do belong there. Maybe you don't belong there as somebody riding the rides, but you belong there as somebody who can describe the place in a unique way that other people may not be able to describe.
Well, thanks. Appreciate that. One of the things I like about the tilting lens is how you can have like this area of solidity and then this area of motion, and where it almost fades out. And so I felt like that was actually useful for my purposes here. This is maybe a little too literal, just kind of this, these little guns that they have on the rocket ships, kind of trying to make it look kind of ominous. And that's what I have.
So you're kind of new to photography. What got you interested?
In photography?
Yeah.
I mean, I've always sort of liked different artistic forms, and I find that photography, in some ways it's kind of one of the more straightforward artistic forms, but on the other hand, I mean, I'm finding that it's a challenge to kind of bring a unique vision to what you're doing. And so that really interests me. And I mean, I like going places and taking pictures of things, and I kind of, I like the sort of technical aspects of it and trying to learn that part too.
Yeah, it's good to see you experimenting with your techniques and equipment here. Keep on doing it.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, I really think that the tilt shift lens was just perfect for your subject matter. Some of those shots looking up at the roller coaster or the Ferris wheel, where part of it is sharp and part of it is really blurred out, I think really were effective.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it creates this motion and a disorienting effect.
Right. Yeah.
And I
We
really
have
like,
3 more minutes. Yeah, go ahead. Keep asking questions, people. Sorry.
I'm really, I like the idea that you're not constrained by the conventional rules of composition. Look at this thing. You would not be selected at a county fair photo contest, that's for sure, with this thing. I love it.
Well, I'm not sure if that's because I'm not constrained, or because I don't really understand the rules of composition yet.
That's positive in this case, in your case.
Thanks.
I just wanted to say that you say that you're new to photography. Well, congratulations. I mean, you've done a great job of putting together a project and executing it, and your intention comes through in your photographs and in the project as a whole, even without you having to explain things to us. Your work explains itself. So great job.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
Well
Appreciate
said,
it.
Randy.
I really enjoyed the series too, and I think it would be fun to play with the sequence, and also because, for example, this last shot I think would be a great first shot, title card. And I like your point of view in terms of looking for close-ups, etc. I might edit it just a little bit just to move things around. I'd probably like lose the Coke shot and keep it more specific to the emotion that you want to share. But I really enjoyed the shots and thought they were really interesting to look at.
Thank you. Thanks.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thanks, Steve, for taking the time to put together this program. Keep working on this project. I think it's really interesting.
Well, thanks for all the comments. I appreciate it.
All right. So up next, we have Patricia Davidson. Patricia, I think you're here. So if you want to share your screen.
All righty. Hello, everyone.
Hi, and you're going to have until just shortly before 9. So you have as much time as you need up until then. I'll let you know when you're getting close, so you don't have to keep track yourself. Bob, I think you're going to introduce Patricia.
Yes, it's my honor to introduce Patricia Davidson. Patricia is a professional landscape and nature photographer based in Oregon. She spent over 20 years on the Southern Oregon coast developing her landscape photography skills on the beaches and in the forests of the Pacific Northwest. With a background in the visual arts and web development, Patricia devotes herself to creating images that express her artistic vision and passion for photography, and to sharing her love of nature and the outdoors with the world. And Patricia is going to speak to us on creating an impact in your color landscape images. I might say I heard a talk by Patricia, I think it was in one of the Out of Chicago conferences on Zoom during the pandemic, and really enjoyed her talk, and had her in the back of my mind since then. So
Well, thank you, Robert.
Thank you for Patricia for coming to speak to us tonight.
All right, it's my pleasure. And so I live south of you in Malala, so not too far from you guys. I go to Portland often. So I wanted to talk about color because not that I don't not like black and white photography. I love it actually. But for me, color is something that I'm more passionate about. So this is what I'm going to talk about today. So a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to talk about why I chose to talk about color. It's not about color theory. I'm not going to get into all that. So it's just my perspective on what I like to do with my color landscape photos. So I'll give a few tips on better composition. I know most of you probably don't need tips on composition, but I'll give you my perspective on what I'm thinking when I'm composing an image. And also, I'll talk about the variables that impact color in your photos, and then a few techniques that I use to affect the color. So that was a great introduction, but I wanted to tell you that I was a web developer for many years, and I did a lot with design because I actually did web development and also a little bit of graphic work by designing my own websites. I did that for years. And I worked at a community college on the Southern Oregon coast. That's where I'm from, actually. I spent over 20 years down there on the coast. And that's where I got the bug because it's so gorgeous down there. There's my favorite place, Bandon, which most of you have probably been to and love as well. So I just couldn't help myself. I was a point and shoot kind of gal where I just had a little point and shoot camera. And at some point, it was probably 2009 or somewhere about there. I think it was 2008. I won a photography contest for the Parks and Recreation, the state of Oregon. And so my picture ended up on the cover of a calendar for the state. Now, looking back at it, it wasn't a great photo, but I did win it with a point and shoot camera. And so my husband surprised me with my first DSLR. And that's when really I got addicted to photography. I put more thought instead of just, point and shooting and snapping images. I wanted to compose better images. And so I learned how to do photography. And landscape photography for me is where my passion lies. I love wildlife. I'm not very good at wildlife photography. I will take the opportunity if it presents itself. I will take pictures of wildlife, but mainly I do landscapes, and that's what I love to do. And so all my photos, because I worked at a college, my weekends or my time off at the college were all times where I could just relax. I could get renewed again by going out in nature, taking photos. And it just was so calming for me because I had a really stressful job. So I spent a lot of time taking pictures of the beaches and the forest. And so just a little sampling of some of the images. And as you can see, I do love color. And then somewhere about 2015, I quit my job, and my husband and I traveled in an RV for 4.5 years. So we had this little thing, and that had to go because you couldn't live full time in it. So but this little adventure rig got us all around, the Pacific Northwest mainly. Before we bought the RV. And so it was a 32-foot motorhome. And so you could see this picture, City of Rocks Campground in New Mexico. And this is how we rolled for 4.5 years. It took us to some really beautiful places, and it was amazing to stay in these places for a long period of time. I could stay as long as I wanted. And as you can see, because I lived on the Southern Oregon coast, I lived in Coos Bay, Shore Acres was a place to go often. And so, as you can see, I also do black and white. So why did I choose color? So color is a part of our natural world. When I'm out on a hike, my husband and I love to hike. And when I'm out in nature, the colors, the beauty, and everything, just like I said, it calms me down. It gives me a sense of peace. And it stands out to me, the color in nature. And of course, color can affect your mood or emotions. Like I mentioned, it had a calming effect on me. So when you talk about a good photo, what makes a good photo? And it's in the eye of the beholder, and it's subjective. So what I might like, you might like. So this is kind of like where my thinking, I'm not saying you have to do this, or your photo might be bad because it doesn't look like mine, nothing like that, because I really enjoy it. Like, I enjoyed watching your photos in the slideshow and the presentation, because to me, photography just opens up a whole new world. So composition and light are keys to creating a good photograph. Now, you could have a good photograph without light. There's got to be some sort of compelling composition, but I feel like they go hand in hand. So if you have light and color, and of course, color can be affected by the light. That's why I like this little thing here, and I can't read my screen. Let me minimize. Okay. So in nature, light creates the color. In the picture, color creates the light. I really like that saying. And this is a photo I took in Antelope Canyon in Arizona. Oops, I can't change my screen. Hang on. Whoops. There we go. So there, everybody has a different opinion about this. I bet if I were to take a poll between this little group, I'd find out that we all had different opinions, and that's okay. So composition or light, which is more important? Can you have one without the other? So I feel like light can project the tone and mood of an image. And also the same can be said about color. So when I'm in the field and I'm looking for a composition, I'm looking for a great composition, but I'm also sometimes waiting for light. I'm waiting for certain things to present themselves, the conditions, the light. Do I have a composition that's good? So here's something else I like: embrace light, admire it, but above all, know the light. Know it for all you are worth, and you will know the key to photography. That was George Eastman. So for me, light influences the colors. And then if you got light and composition together, I feel like your image can really have impact. Right, so mastering composition and taking advantage of available light take time and patience. For me, it seems like the more I've been into photography, the more I'm learning. I'm always learning. And, I don't think I stop learning, because even this weekend I went to a photography conference, and I listened to different speakers, and I learned something from every speaker. So all of us have an ability to learn, practice our craft. The more you practice, the better you get as a photographer. So here's the 10 compositional tips for more impact. Now, I think foreground images can lead the viewer through your entire image. For example, this is Lost Dutchman, and there is a this cactus. I just got really close with a wide angle lens, and I made sure that it was sharp, and I took this image prior to sunset. But I think what makes it more compelling is that the needles on the cactus are just kind of a little bit glowing from the sun. And by the way, if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the end. And everybody knows this spot probably, Rowena Crest. And I happen to usually shoot, when I go out there, I'll try to get my flowers in focus, but this was a really windy day. And I thought, to me, even though maybe some of the flowers are not as sharp, I could have done some focus stacking, which I often do. But for me, it just kind of, I like the movement that some of the flowers were bending from the wind and everything. And as I got down low, I had a wide angle lens on my camera. And this is at a time when you could go up to Cape Kiwanda. I haven't been back for a while, but I understand that you can't go to this spot because it's fenced off. But it is kind of sketchy, and people have lost their lives at the end of this. But it's a very dangerous area. But I like the motion of this wave coming up and splashing. And I was with a couple of friends, and one of the friends was standing over on the edge of, let me point to it right here. He got up over there, and which could be very dangerous. And we watched the waves. We were photographing the waves, and we were watching them getting higher and higher. And finally, we knew that the next wave was going to be really high. So we took off running. And my friend who was up here took off running and barely made it. He's probably pretty lucky because he could have been washed off. But this was several years ago, and the older I get, the less risk I take. But anyways, that was the story behind that photo. So leading lines and curves are really important. I think it can really visually lead your eye through the frame. This was over at Bridal Creek, Bridalveil Creek in the Gorge. And it was during the first part of the fall season. Another one, this kind of shows texture and curve. This was at White Sands National Park. And this, in this image, you've got I purposely moved my position so I could get a diagonal of this waterfall because I thought it would be a more compelling image. And I wanted to get the little tree that was right here in this shot. Another one from Antelope Canyon in Arizona. It has texture, it has curves, it has light coming down the canyon. I don't know if any of you have been there, but it's pretty amazing when the light is coming through. It really makes the colors in the canyon pop. So one thing that I do on my images, I try to eliminate distractions. So one of the things that I do is, let me show you. Hang on. All right, here's a raw file. I took this photo a few years ago in Cato Lake in Texas. And the cypress trees during the fall turn color. Well, this particular year, I guess some bug had gotten to the leaves, so the trees weren't full, but it was still beautiful. And I remember that morning, it was such a beautiful sunrise with pink hues on the trees. And so I wanted to bring that out in my final edit. But there were a few things about this image that actually were a distraction to me. I really like the leaves that were grouped together, but the other ones kind of floating around kind of distracted my eye anyways, the way I think, and I wanted to clean some of those up. Also, there was a stump that was cut off. So for me, I don't like things that come in from the sides or the top that might distract or cause too much chaos in my image and take away from the composition. So what I did was I had cleaned up some of these leaves in the foreground, and as you can see, it brings out the reflection better. And then I took away the stump and I played around with the colors a little bit. So another thing that I like to play around with is backlighting or sun stars, because I think it really can be dynamic if you can get a sun star in your image or some sort of backlighting. Now, of course, with sun stars, you're going to have to set your aperture to f16 or f2, f22, somewhere around there. Of course, it varies with different lenses. And I think you can have some really impact to your images. So here's an image I took from California redwoods, and I just positioned myself so the backlighting, the sun was hitting the back of the side of the tree, and then there was fog and a little bit of smoke in the air, and it just created those amazing light beams. Now, this image was from Bandon, and I waited for the sun to hit the edge of that sea stack there. And then to compose my image, I saw that there was that pool of water. And so it has a little curve there. And so I think it kind of draws your eye over there into the sky there. So patterns, textures, and groupings and symmetry can really add to your images as well. Now, most of you have probably been out here to the Wooden Shoe Tulip Farm. And of course, we've got rows of color, which can add to your image because there's rows and rows. And then you've got that tractor sitting out there. This is a Colorado image where I really liked, when I was looking from a distance with my telephoto lens, I noticed that the brown bushes were there in the middle. And so I composed my image so those trees were on both the bottom and the top. And this is the Black Canyon Gunnison National Park over in Colorado. And it was a really windy day, and I wasn't even expecting to take pictures. It was pretty crowded. But when I saw the cliffs had groupings of trees just growing out of them, I composed my shot with the diagonal there. It was just a really cool place to visit and photograph. Here's the Umpqua River over in the Oregon Coast Range. And every fall on the Umpqua, you can find scenes like this. And if you get fog, it's pretty incredible. And again, I don't like distractions, so I cleaned up some of the leaves that might have been floating in the water. So sometimes just changing your lens or rotating your camera can make for an impactful photo. So this is your typical tourist shot over at Crater Lake. And I typically won't shoot images like this, but for purpose of demonstration, I wanted to take this photo. As I was standing there viewing this, I noticed that the wind was drifting the clouds closer and closer to the Phantom Ship island that's down here. And so what I did is I just rotated my camera into a vertical with my telephoto lens. I had my 100 to 400 lens, and I waited until the clouds got closer to the island, and I took the shot. And to me, this image is a little bit set apart from the standard one. It's less boring, and the other photo was like, it's okay. But this one, to me, it just makes me happy because it's a little different, and I think it has a little bit more impact than the other image. And a funny story about that, there were these teenage girls that were standing there doing their little selfies together, and they watched me for a while, and finally they said, "You've been here a while. Have you been, are you videotaping?" I said, "No, I'm just waiting for the clouds to get closer to the island there." And they came over and they looked at the back of my screen and they go, "Wow, that's really cool." And they got their phones out and they were all taking this shot. Thought that was fun. And so oftentimes I'll get really low to get on my knees sometimes, especially if I'm at a beach. This is Bandon. And if you're lower, you can get images like this. Sometimes it's a little more impactful when you've got something right in front of your lens in the foreground like this. This is the Sweet Creek Trail in the Oregon Coast Range. I love to go there in fall because it's just so beautiful. And what I did is I just sat down low on a rock and I composed this shot with the leaves in the foreground. So light and shadow is a really dynamic thing that you can add to your images. Look for light, look for shadows. What I like about this image is that the light was going diagonal through the image. And it was sort of the end of the fall. There was a little bit of color on some of the trees, and it kind of made them, more golden, I would guess you would say. But I really liked shooting this. It's over at John's Red Viewpoint. I like to go, I'm kind of doing a fog project right now. So I'm trying to take a lot of fog pictures, and that's a great place to go because in the wintertime, you'll often get fog. This is from the Palouse, and of course, if you're up on Steptoe Butte and looking down with your long lens, you can capture all kinds of compositions with shadow and light. This is Sedona, Arizona. And I just saw that rock formation was glowing, so I composed my shot. So abstracts and intimates are something that's fun to do. I think it's a good way to get creative, and sometimes I get bored with doing the same type of photography, so I'll often put on my 100 to 400. I also have a 24 to 200 lens, and you can just get more creative, I think, sometimes in the landscapes. So abstracts change our perspective of how we're used to seeing our surrounding natural environment because it focuses on textures, symmetry, shapes, color, light and shadow. And I think there's no rules at all. It's your vision. So whatever you think looks good to you, that's your vision. And I think it's a lot of fun to play around with. So isolating a portion of the landscape can really be impactful. Antelope Canyon, I like the curves in this and the light coming through. Now this was Bernie Falls in California. I ended up there when we were traveling full-time in the RV on we didn't know, but it was a school holiday. So it was like crawling with people. And so in those type of situations, I always get out my long lens and I'll just play with things. I decided to play with the water and experiment with different shutter speeds. And I had my circular polarizer filter on. So intentional camera movement can be fun as well to experiment with. You know, you can, usually it's panning up and down or side to side. And I like doing the up and down, but I've also tried side to side. So last fall, I took this image over in Salem and it was kind of the end of the fall season and I had been really busy and I hadn't gotten a chance to get out much. So to me, it was a little dull just taking this picture, but I said, hey, I'm going to have some fun. And I ended up experimenting with different panning methods. And oftentimes in post-processing, like this one, I brought out the color. I didn't saturate it at all, but I brought in, I lightened it up. And then I filled in some of the little gaps between the leaves. So there was no distractions. Same with this one, had some fun playing around with it. So like I said, you're going to use a longer lens. It's usually 70 to 200 or longer, and you're isolating portions of your image. And I think it really trains your eye really to look for compositions when you're trying these methods. So the image on the right was Panther Creek Falls over in Washington, and then the one on the left is just taking a portion with a longer lens because I thought it made a picture in itself. Another time I was at a national park and it was quite busy, and I decided to just focus on intimates. And so I was photographing this and suddenly that little killdeer bird just walked in. So I call this bird bath. I was kind of amazed that he was hopping around and, you know, his feet didn't burn. I don't know. It was funny watching him because he did get water on him and it was like incredible to watch. So number 10 is sense of scale. I always try to add sense of scale in my image. If this fisherman was not in this photo, I think it wouldn't quite tell the story that this image does. So this was Trillium Lake, and it was during the summer. It was a bluebird sky, but there was fog, and the fog just got thicker and thicker. And some people think this looks kind of like a sand dune, but I guess it would look more like a sand dune if the fishermen weren't there. And here is Shore Acres State Park, one of the fun places to go during the high surf advisories. And as you can see, little people over there on the watching. And this couple enjoying a beautiful sunset. It just adds to the picture to have those people in there, I think. So what I would say is experiment and have fun. It's all about your vision and your photography, what you like to do. I like to spend a lot of time, if I'm going for a sunset or a sunrise, I'm going to go early, because if you stay early, go early, stay late, you could have a chance to maybe shoot the blue hour, scout around, find compositions. And one thing that taught me to slow down, because when I worked at the college and I had my weekends off or my holidays, I would just go, go, go. I was one of those weekend warriors that was always rushing around, trying to get all my bucket list done in a short time. But since I quit my job in 2015 and decided to be full-time in photography, it taught me to slow down and enjoy my surroundings. So sometimes even if I'm on a hike and I don't get a shot, I still feel like I've had a great time because I've been outdoors. But oftentimes when I'm outdoors, it really inspires me because I start thinking about who, can I find a good picture in this situation? So I would say just explore, have fun. And one of the things I don't do is replace skies, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I enjoy the experience of actually going out and going often to a location until I get that good sunset or that good sunrise. So to me, it's all about returning often to a location. So I listed 5 variables that impact the color in your landscape photos. So there's the time of day. And as I said, I go early, I scout around, but going early, you might get some chance of like a blue hour. Like this Portland photo, classic photo that I took years ago before I moved up here. But an hour later, this was all gray skies, right? We know what gray skies are like. We see that a lot here. But during the blue hour, it's just a difference. So it made a difference for the color in this image. And I still really like this image. It was a time when I had kids living up in the Portland area, and we'd often come up once in a while to visit. And so it was a fun weekend. It reminds me of the weekend I spent with our family. And this image as well, I stayed later than the sunset. And as you could see on the horizon, there was probably a little bit of color left, but then it got blue. So I never dismiss daylight hours for taking great photos. So like this image is Bryce Canyon, and at certain times in the afternoon, when the sun hits the hoodoos, they kind of glow. And so if the hoodoos weren't lit up and sort of glowing, the texture in the background and the texture on the hoodoos would just kind of blend together. But this way it kind of has separation. Another image I took in Palouse, looking for a great areas that I could shoot in the middle of the day. I noticed these clouds. I noticed the little barn or house there. And at the time I stopped, the clouds were putting a lot of shadow over the landscape. But I knew if I waited, it could change. And so I waited until I got just the right lighting for the canola fields, the wheat fields. And I really enjoy this image. So exposure, of course, knowing your camera inside and out. I've changed cameras a lot over the years. Started with Canon, switched to Fuji, switched to Sony. And every time I buy a new camera, I have to learn that camera and learn it well. And oftentimes I use my histogram. Now for exposure, I used to bracket my images quite a bit and do some exposure blending. I don't do it as much anymore because the cameras these days are pretty good with dynamic range. So I don't often do that as much anymore. But weather conditions can play a part in the color of your landscape images. Now, I don't mind going out in the rain. It rains a lot here, so I often will go out and take images in the rain, especially if there's a waterfall or there's a creek, forest. I love that look because I think it just makes everything a little crisper and brighter. And I think it really enhances the color in the landscape images. This was an image I took. It was pouring rain over in the Umpqua National Forest, White Horse Falls. So the tools are important as well. I do use circular polarizing filters most of the time, especially when there's water. It takes off the glare, and sometimes it can also enhance the color in an image. Like sometimes the sky can be bluer, but you do need to be careful because it can cause some problems as well. But I also use neutral density filters, not as much, but I do occasionally, depending on the effects I want from my beach scenes or my waterfalls. And then I never use a graduated neutral density filter, but I know a lot of people do. So here's an example from Bandon where I got down low. I was using a long shutter speed and playing around with the polarizer to get enhance the reflection. And another image where I used a polarizing filter. So seasons can affect and bring new color into our images as well. And you guys know this tree. I usually go every year to photograph it. This was a couple of years ago and at Portland Japanese Gardens. And this turned out to be my favorite year photographing this tree and other things in the garden because I got there, I think I went twice that year to photograph it. I went a little too early and then I went during this time. And there was just a little tinge of the color. There was yellow, still green in there. And it turned out to be one of my favorite years. But I went back like a week later and there had been a big windstorm and the tree was bare. So that happens too. So techniques that affect the color in post. So I know people use different software. I use Lightroom and Photoshop, but we've got other tools available. But in any tool, there's a chance to make a change in your white balance and temperature, the hue and saturation, and then color grading. I don't do any color grading, but I do sometimes change the white balance often or the temperature. And then sometimes with the hue and saturation. Now, sometimes I even lower the saturation because I throw a lot of images away that are just okay, but I always wait for those great opportunities for light. So I'm always looking for those vibrant skies and things like that. So masking tools that I use in Lightroom and Photoshop, you can make adjustments to your color and tone as well. So in Lightroom, I use the mask in Lightroom often, and the radial gradient tool is one of my favorite things to do. In this photo from Sparks Lake over in the Bend area, I noticed when I was taking the picture that there was some light on the little island there, and I wanted to kind of bring that out a little more. So I used the radial gradient tool to enhance the color and light. So often, if you look at this screenshot here, you'll see that I played around with the exposure, the highlights. Sometimes I'll adjust the temperature as well. And that can actually bring light into your photograph. So here's the final image. Now here's a raw file from the Palouse, and it was a pretty good shot. I mean, it was a beautiful day. It actually was my favorite year. I went last year, and I think I came back with so many images I liked because the conditions were just amazing. But what I wanted to do is kind of highlight that barn and those trees in the center. And so what I did is I drew a radial gradient around the whole image, and then I inverted it. And so I played with the, whoops, sorry about that. And so what I did was, you can look over here and see what I played around with the contrast. I brought down the exposure, and here you can see that I inverted it. And so the final image just brought in a little bit more light into the center of the image and kind of did a vignette sort of thing around the image. And that was a pretty easy, that's pretty much the only thing I did with that image. There was no saturation that I played with. Here's a raw file from Rowena Crest. And I wanted to bring out a little, there was a weird thing in this, like a cliff thing that I wanted to get rid of because I thought it was distracting. And also I wanted to change, this had more cool tones in this tree, and I wanted to warm it up a little. So what I did is I created a mask on the tree, and I just kind of played with the temperature, warming it up a little bit. Whoops, going the wrong way. So I thought I had, I forgot to put, you know what? I forgot to put the slide in there. I was going to show you the before and after. Well, sorry about that. Actually, if you don't mind, I could grab my keynote here, which has it in, I believe. I must not have saved it. Anyways, I did have the final image in there. Okay. Okay, here's another one with color dodge and burning in Photoshop. So sometimes I will paint in color or light in selective sections of my images using a brush tool on a dodge and burn layer. So on the left here, you have the raw file. I took this at the Japanese gardens last year, and I just wanted to have some fun with it because I remember how vibrant the colors were, and they didn't come across in my raw file, but the little bush over here was more red and orange, I guess. And I wanted to have some fun with this one and sort of burn in some light. So the image on the right, I actually burned in a little bit of yellow to make it look like light on the bridge. And then I don't like distractions. And you could see at the top of the trees here and over to the side, there was some gaps where the light was coming through, and I just filled that in. And I did some burning on the bush or the tree here as well to bring back the color. And so I'll often do that. And that one I was just having a little fun with. I thought it looked kind of fairy-like or something. But okay, and I do tell in this how to do it, but we're running out of time here, I can see. Here's the final image, a little larger.
You're doing great on time, Patricia.
Oh, okay. So here I have Metlaco Falls, which I guess you can no longer see like this, and I'm lucky to have these photos, I guess. It was kind of a sketchy way of photographing this anyways, hanging onto a tree and kind of leaning over a cliff. But anyways, the day I was there was that mist and the light coming through, and I wanted it to come through, really enhance how I saw it that day. And so I did do a little dodging and burning on the trees around the side here, and using a little bit of light yellow to do that. So another creative technique I like to use is intentional blur in post. So I did not do this in the field. I did it in Photoshop, and it's very simple to do. And the photo on the left, some quaking aspen that was over in Utah. I got this in my, opened this up after I saw it, and I thought, oh, it's a little drab to me. Let's have some fun. So I created the intentional blur in Photoshop. And then I used an eraser tool brush to actually, because one photo is on top of the other, I always make a duplicate. So this duplicate one, I did a little erasing to bring back some of the little texture in the branches on the trees. And I think to me, it's a little more fun, a little more impactful than the document shot there. And so here I tell you how I did that in Photoshop. That's the final image. So to me, color makes me smile. And that's why I really like this quote by Leigh Hunt, that colors are the smiles of nature. And so this is a photo from Bandon, and it's just, you know, when I'm there at a sunset or a sunrise and I have great color, I just get really excited and it makes me happy. And so that's the way I think, and that's the way I do things with my photography. So that's kind of the end of what I had for you. You can find me anywhere under P. Davidson Photo, my website, Patricia Davidson Photography, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thanks for sharing your work with us. Do you do any workshops or anything like that?
I do a lot of public speaking, but I don't do workshops. I have done some private tours in the past. I'm not doing any right now. But at this time, the main part of my business is selling prints and speaking engagements, selling prints, licensing prints, and things like that. Oops.
Who's got questions for Patricia?
Okay.
Well, I've got a couple of questions, actually, Patricia. First of all, thank you for showing your work. I really appreciated it. And
thank you.
I've got to say that I was genuinely jealous when you said that you were just traveling around for 4.5 years. So I wanted to plug my ears on that. One of the things that you said was color has a calming effect on you. And it kind of like color is a big term. And I was wondering, what is it about the color that has that calming effect? Is it actually the hue, like any kind of value, intensity? What is it about color that has that calming effect on you?
Well, I know there's people that say the same thing about black and white photography. I think it has a calming effect as well. But for me, I guess it makes me feel alive when I see color in nature. It's nature is alive and it's growing. It's living and breathing. I don't know. Just always has been my thing. Great question.
Was that your only question, Giannis?
Well, let's see. Like, where are you selling your prints? I'm just kind of curious.
On my website, I also have an Etsy account, and I do, because of my website, I've had a website since the early days of my photography, and I used to use it as just a blog as I was learning, and then I sort of changed it over the years to more of a place where I could, show my photography and appeal to buyers and appeal to like businesses and licensing, for medical centers and things like that. So I do get a lot of work. Like right now, I'm on an assignment. I do assignment photography as well. I'm currently on an assignment for somebody that's producing a website, and so I'm going to a location and photographing for this assignment. So I've had so many unique opportunities over the years. I've written for magazines. I've written for a website called Visual Wilderness. I did that for a number of years. I enjoy writing, but I got tired of writing for other websites and helping them to grow their audience, and decided that I would just write for myself. So I have some plans coming up with more writing involved, but I also enjoy that.
Something I was curious about, I see that you do masking in Lightroom. Why are you doing burning and dodging in Photoshop? What is it that you find more that works better for you?
Well, actually, I have been doing more of it in Lightroom since more tools have been available. And I'm finding that I'm doing a lot more. I get really excited when a new update comes out because there's so many amazing tools now available in Lightroom that we couldn't do a few years ago. So I have been doing a lot more with all types of masking, with burning and dodging as well in Lightroom. And I know you're the Lightroom guru. So
I used to do that in Photoshop, but like you said, the masking in Lightroom has gotten so powerful.
Yeah, it's amazing. And even with the new tools in Photoshop, I took a photo, an old photo when I first started photography. I really liked the photo, but there was a lot of noise and everything. I did some correcting in Lightroom, which was amazing. And then between the two of them, and topaz sharpening, I still use that. I know you can sharpen in Photoshop and Lightroom, but I love topaz, and it's incredible, I think. And since I do a lot of large prints, sharpness matters to me. So but I took an older photo, and it was amazing what I could do with it, just to kind of make it what it should have been without really, making it look like it wasn't my photo. Not to say that, but it actually took away the noise, it sharpened it up a little bit. And so we have some incredible tools available right now.
I see a printer behind you. Are you doing your own printing? Are you sending that out?
I do. I can print up to 16 by 24, and anything else bigger than that I send out. But I just got it a couple of years ago, and I'm really having fun. I love printing. It's fun.
Mhm.
So
Can be
what camera
rewarding
body
when
are you
things look
using
good.
now?
I
What's that,
have
Joe?
a
What
Sony
camera body?
A7R camera body. Yeah, I have a Sony A7R IV currently.
I was wondering, since you live in Aloha, not too far from me, do you ever go to Jenkins Estates?
No, where's that?
Up Grabhorn, off of Farmington. There's a small Japanese garden there, and there's trails all over the place,
Wow.
and some old buildings. It's a pretty fun place. I live across the street, so it takes me 10 minutes to get there, but it's on Grabhorn.
Near Malala? Near Malala?
Yeah, it's in Aloha, yeah. But if you go down head west on Farmington to Grabhorn, 209th and Grabhorn, and you go up the hill.
Yeah, I don't live in Aloha. I live in Malala.
Oh, Malala. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Malala. Okay.
But
Different
I'm
place.
always anxious to hear about new places to go.
Patricia, hi.
Hi.
I also want to thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed it. You mentioned that you occasionally use a polarizing filter, especially with water scenery, and you said sometimes you find that there's a potential downside in using the polarizer. And so when do you reach for that polarizer, and what effects do you expect to achieve?
Well, for the waterfalls, of course, it's going to reduce the glare, or the streams, the rivers. And it's kind of nice when you could cut through that glare and see through the water. So I use that a lot. Yeah, I think where I mentioned that sometimes on the sky, you got to be really careful, because you can actually have some uneven tones in your sky by using the polarizer, and introduce some things into your sky that aren't very pretty. So, I use it cautiously, but as I said, I use it all the time for the waterfalls, a lot of times for the beach photos. Sometimes I'll take it off, of course, to do sunset. But if I'm trying to do some, long exposure, sometimes I just need a polarizer, and I don't have to always put on the ND filter. So.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have kind of a long-term question. Is like you've been doing like landscape photography for a while, and I'd like to hear your perspective first. Is like, what kind of changes have you seen, whether it's competition, equipment, whatever, and then look into the future for the next 5-10 years, and tell me what you see for landscape photographers in the next 5 or 10 years.
Well, it'll be interesting, because AI is going to affect our images. Just playing around with it, a friend of mine actually sent me a family photo that was taken by some professional photographer, and there was a lot of sun flare in it. The sun flare can be appealing, but in this case, it wasn't. The sun flare got all over the bodies and stuff of the group of people, and it just looked terrible, actually. And so she had asked me to clean it up, and I couldn't have done this, I think, a few years ago, but with the tools we have to get rid of some of that sun flare, I did some filling in where she didn't like this big old glob of light coming from the trees, but with the AI generative tool, I was able to fill it in. But I will tell you, it's kind of crazy because I told it to fill in and match the leaves on the tree. Okay. And it did some interesting things. It took me a couple of tries, but at one point it put a guy in the tree with a bucket. It was the strangest thing, like a leprechaun or something. So, I mean, it was funny, but anyways, I was able to remove some of the sun flare from the people, the ground, the trees and stuff easily because of the tools we have. But as far as changing landscapes in the future, I think it's going to be really hard to tell, what's AI generated. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Do you feel like that devalues the landscape photography or just some techniques? Or
I think it'll be fun for creativity, maybe in some photo contests where it may be questionable, they may open up categories, and I see that some are for AI generated. And I think you have to tell them what you did to the photo. So I think that's a good way of approaching it, like in photo contests.
More questions? All right. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Once again, Patricia, thank you for taking the time to present to us and share some of your valuable insight. Like you said, you go to conferences to continue learning. I learned a couple of things today, so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It was great that you all came to listen to me, and I appreciate that. And it looks like you have a great group of people. That's wonderful. And like I said, I really enjoyed seeing your photos, and that was fun.
It's a great group to join.
There's a plug.
Mark, if I was just going to take a second, and since Patricia talked a little about following your own personal vision, just coincidentally, the book that we are doing, Personal Vision, is done. I've submitted the first print last week, so should get a hard copy for the very last bit of editing and making sure that the photographs, transferred well onto the printed page. So I was just going to let everybody know that we're on our way getting it done, and I'm pretty happy with it. We had 37 submissions altogether. 15 of them are new people that hadn't done the last book, so some new work in there, and there's some really fascinating stuff. So just tie that in. So
Well, I just got a sneak peek of that, and I'm really anxious to see what it looks like printed. It's a really good collection of different ways of everybody expressing their personal vision. Thanks for mentioning that, Tim. I imagine in a couple of weeks we'll be able to tell everybody where they can get it.
Can I ask Tim a question?
Yeah.
Tim, or first of all, thank you for doing that. It's like putting together that stuff. We did it the first year, and it's a lot of work. So thank you for doing that. The question is like, will we be able to see any kind of a proof before the the book actually goes to press?
Well, nobody has to buy anything. It'll just be it'll be available for purchase. So I think you can go on and look at a preview of some of it.
Yeah. Will you preview some of it on Blurb so people can go see part of it?
I think so. But there'll be a link, and you can go purchase it. I think you can preview some of it.
Actually, Tim, my question is like, I remember, like there's things about like spacing, or, oh my gosh, like one year I caught where one photograph was one pica off, just little things like that. To me, it's always good to have a lot of editors looking because I know I'm getting older, so I miss a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, we have a team, besides myself, Mark and Robert Bergstrom, and Johanna have reviewed. We did a draft PDF file of the book, and they reviewed that. I've reviewed it probably 15 to 20 times myself. Every time I found something, and finally the last time I went through it, I couldn't find anything else wrong. So I'm hoping that it's good. That my only concern is I want to make sure that the photos transfer visually from what I'm saying and you're saying, project from your computer screen looks good on the paper, because it's a different approach. It's light reflected off the page as opposed to being transmitted off of the screen. And I did a little bit of tweaking with a few of them with the autocorrect. Most of them not, because it didn't work well at all. So I just want to make sure everything looks good, and if there's a problem, then we can go back to those original photos and possibly have them tweaked a little bit so that they look good on the printed page. But I think most of the editing and the fonts, the text, the photo spacing, it was a challenge because everybody had different formats, different sizes, some landscape, some vertical, some combination of both. And so, it was tricky to try to format the pages, but I think it looks pretty good. So I'm optimistic everybody will be pretty happy.
Looks like a couple other people had questions. Mark, did you have a question? Mark Garman?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to remind everybody that Portland Open Studios is happening, was happening this past weekend as well as next weekend. I'm exhibiting, but I think it's really cool because there's a lot of different artists and different mediums all throughout Portland. There's 114 artists, sculptors, painters, you name it. And it's really fun. Last year, my partner and I did it. You can go into people's homes, into their studios, their converted garages, and it's kind of fun to go into somebody else's space and see what they're doing. And it's a fun event. You can go out for breakfast in the morning and tour around to 3 or 4 places, go get some lunch and go to another part of town and see other people. And I think it's important for us as a group to support other artists, because that's, you go into these people's spaces and they're watercolor artists, you get a lot of inspiration from other art forms. So I encourage everybody this weekend to get out and walk around the neighborhoods of Portland.
That's a cool event. Thanks for the reminder. Someone else had a hand up. Was that you, Larry, or somebody? Larry Thompson? No. Saw someone raise their hand earlier. Okay. Well, I guess that does do it. All right, everybody. Great to see you. Thanks for joining the meeting tonight. We look forward to seeing you at our November meeting. Take care. Bye.